They say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm Lynn Freeman, and here we draw on my conversations with experts on 9 to Noon to help you navigate family life. Annette, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, look, it's our pleasure. Your baby Jackson is now 2.5. I wonder that first year, maybe those first 6 months, did all the theory that you knew so well prepare you for the reality?
You know, when I was expecting and I was preparing for having a new little one join our household, I thought, I've got this. I know all there is to know about all this fun stuff that's going to be happening. Well, nothing can prepare you for labor and the first couple months after that. It was sheer chaos for the first little bit.
Did anything that you learnt, taught, thought about, read help you in those first few months?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you read all the important theories about infant development and what parenting is supposed to be, you learn that you need to be a responsive, caring, empathetic parent and a role model of self-control and being sensitive to your baby's attention and their emotions and what they're doing. All those things were, of course, really helpful because sometimes you can get all caught up in the stresses of the everyday and you just sometimes just have to sit back and look at that little baby and just, try to focus on him or her and figuring out what they need from you.
Much easier if the baby could just read what they're supposed to do and follow the rules. But of course, they're all their own little individuals as well, and they're going to go off script.
Exactly, they do. I mean, one of the things that my work and my reading has always told me is that babies are really, really smart. They come out of the womb really ready to learn and motivated to kind of take in any of the information or anything that you're giving to them. So the everyday experiences of just sitting there and showing them a bright colored toy or even a bright colored spoon that you're cooking with, right? It's good to show them these things and they're just so attentive to everything and just little sponges.
An awful lot of parents, and may I say this when I use the word older, I'm not saying old, I'm just saying older, can be very anxious. They bring these expectations and anxieties with them. My sister worked with parents as first teachers before it was scrapped, and she would say that the teenage mums were really super confident. They just went with it, and they were very relaxed. They hadn't done the reading. They just went with their instincts. But the older parents perhaps were more likely to be anxious, anxious about their own performance, anxious about their baby's performance. Do you think there's any truth in that?
I do. I mean, right from when I was pregnant, I was called a geriatric mom here in New Zealand.
Oh, crikey. That's a bit rough.
I had never even thought that I was even close to that. So, it started off really kind of anxious about, oh my goodness, I'm in this unique kind of different state and need to be aware to things. On top of the fact that I'm supposedly an expert in child development.
No pressure
no pressure at all. But I do think that there is a lot of information out there about what parents need to do, what we should be doing, all of those different kinds of things, that it is very easy to fall into the trap of feeling like you need to know everything. And if you make one wrong move, you're going to negatively impact your child forever. It's very easy to fall into that trap.
I also, have heard from young parents who might take advice from both sides of their grandparents, and they may have different views, and then they hear from somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of advice out there, and also things change, understanding changes. If we look at the way to place a baby to sleep has changed. We're learning more about it, but that can be. I know people who've got themselves terribly confused, listening almost to too many people and not knowing the right thing, if there is one single right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to kind of think about. We sat back, talked about the kind of parents that we would be, and we had this plan. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, your baby is its own unique individual. And so you could have this whole plan on how you're going to respond to different kinds of situations and seek all of the advice that you want. But when you have your baby there, your baby could be a completely different personality than what you thought your baby was going to be, or how they respond to different types of behaviors that you do. Just you cannot predict and you cannot plan for. So getting all the advice ahead of time, I think of it as, and same with the knowledge that I have, like you're given a bunch of tools, right? And so you acquire this information, you learn from different people, and you have all these tools at your disposal. And not one tool is necessarily the only tool that you can use, but you find the tool that is the best fit for the job and helps you get that task completed or, successfully achieve what it is that you and your baby are trying to do.
As a new mum, did you feel that you had adequate support? And I'm saying outside the relationship and the family home, but out there in the community. Were you well supported?
I think New Zealand, I believe that this is one thing that New Zealand does really, really well. So I'm from Canada originally, and we have a great healthcare system. But of course, that means all of my family is over in Canada. And so when we were here, we didn't have a lot of family to help us out. So we sought the community support. The midwife system here, I think, is a remarkable resource. Plunkett is fantastic. We also joined the Hibiscus Coast Parenting Center antenatal course. And so through that course, we met a wonderful group of families who have been really supportive to us to this point and hopefully continue to be. So I find that the community is a wonderful place. And if you find a group of parents who, have similar values, but as you and are just there to help and to chat with in a non-judgmental kind of way, then that helps you get through those really, really long days.
I'm sure that many books and theses have been written about the need to establish patterns around those first 6 months. What did you find in practice with your baby?
Yes, this was another kind of area where we had a plan of what we thought we were going to do, and we thought, okay, we're going to set up those sleep routines right away. But of course, you have your little baby, and Jackson, our baby, he needed to cuddle with us and have that time with us. And so we didn't start those routines as early as we thought we would have done. And I guess what it was is at some point we just kind of decided, you know what, let's try our best not to get worked up about what we had planned to do and just go with what he needs from us at that time. That being said, once we got through those first 6 months, where, we know he's growing well, we've got the changing routines going. And at that point, then it became a part where I had to go back to work. And so we had to start developing a few more kind of more strict routines about sleep time. And then we felt that that was an okay time for us to start doing those routines and establishing patterns of behavior that we believed would help us out for the rest of our lives with him.
And it's sounding also that you and your partner are on the same team, and you make that point. It's much easier if the parenting team is on the same page. But you're going to have instances, I imagine, where parents may have different views on sleep routines or the use of devices or even using dummies, that kind of thing. And I guess you just got to try and resolve those as quickly as possible.
Yeah, for sure. You do have to be on the same page, but you're not always going to be on the same page, as you say. And it's dealing with those, not having assumptions that you're going to be on the same page about everything is really important, because I know there's been some times where I assumed my partner and I were on the same page, and then something comes out and you're like, what? I thought you totally thought the same as me. But then what it is talking to each other, not, right in front of your child, not when you're emotionally charged, but you go afterwards and you talk and you try your best to hear the other person's perspective and come to some sort of a solution or a compromise and just try to kind of sort it out. Dummy use was an interesting issue for us because I think when we started out, we're never going to use dummies. I had a dummy until I was 5. My family had to hide it on me. And so we just thought that was going to be something that we were kind of common perspective on. But it was easier for Jackson to sleep when he had a dummy, and it did make our lives easier at that point in time. Now we're kind of paying for it now because we're going to have to go through a phase where we're retraining him to not have the dummy, but it made our lives easier at that point in time. And as a partnership, we had to decide that that's what we were going to do.
Here's an interesting text from a listener. Imagine what it's like to be a 36-year-old geriatric mum pregnant with twins. She says most information is based on single births, not multiples, and the sheer volumes of work required to manage with multiples, in addition to managing as a new parent or managing older kids, is not really available, that kind of support. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Can you imagine Jackson times two?
That is an absolutely tricky one. And no, I cannot imagine it. I have a deeply profound respect for parents of all kind now, and parents of multiples. I just hope that there's the support out there, that there are specialized groups that have support networks that can share those similar kinds of experiences. And I guess what it is it's, if there's a point where you need support, don't be scared to admit it and just try to seek some assistance and some help in that regard. And, trying to find people who are able to listen and just be there for you is sometimes what you just need. But I can't imagine that. A geriatric mom with twins, and then not even a geriatric mom. I would like to have us stop using that phrase.
Let's start that right here and now.
Yes.
Infants, you make the point, need new experiences. So, of course, they need to be kept fed and kept dry and looked after. But this issue of new experiences, you've certainly found yourself, I think, is incredibly important for a baby.
It is. So, as I said before, children are born motivated to learn. They just they seek out new things in their environment and take things in about those new experiences. Now, as a developmental scientist coming in at it, I thought everything was a learning experience. So everything that Jackson did, I was like, how can I make this into a learning experience? It kind of got a little bit tiring in the end, and then I just decided I had to sit back and enjoy it. But when I say everything's a learning experience, what this makes you realize is that just the everyday things that you do can teach children so many different kinds of things. So you don't necessarily need to seek out specialized courses or specialized devices to teach you things. I think sometimes those are particularly helpful, and they help people develop new strategies or things to combat the boredom sometimes that happens in terms of thinking of new things. But just the experience of cooking in front of your child, making sure the child, of course, is safe from the cooking devices. But engaging with your child about listening to the sounds of the birds outside or seeing new sights. It's just those kind of everyday things that can really help the bonding, but also help that young child's mind continue to grow.
And as you say, it doesn't have to be expensive. Just put a little bit of thought into it.
Exactly.
They're not going to know if it's an expensive toy or something with colour on it that you've just found in the bottom of the drawer.
No, and exactly. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of you must buy these new things. But my partner he keeps me grounded in that regard. And so we come up to, we had a old nappy box that we would make into a musical instrument, for example, or old kind of food shaker. You put some things in it and you can make noises out of that.
I like the sound of that myself, actually. Now, you describe your parenting style as authoritative. What does that mean?
Yeah, so basically what it means is not being too permissive. So it's not that our son can roam free and just do whatever he wants. You establish kind of boundaries, but you have an explanatory parenting style. So, when your child gets worked up and you have to maybe possibly give him a timeout, and that happens sometimes, you explain to them why you're doing these kinds of things. So it's about teaching your children about boundaries and that there are kind of reasons why these boundaries exist, but in a calm, supportive environment.
And what sort of age? Because I just had this flashback to that story that was all over the media, as you might expect, a few weeks ago about, from memory, it was about the concept of asking permission of your baby to change the nappy. And it just went ballistic, of course. But what about the description of boundaries? I mean, do you start young?
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic, and it's largely debated, and there are many different views on this. So this is kind of a sensitive area, but for us, I remember when I babysat for my niece once, and she was a year and a half, and my sister explained everything to her and gave her choices about things. And in my head, I was like, she doesn't understand. She doesn't know these things. But then, of course, what the theory suggests and what in practice now we try to do is they might not be actually understanding the words that are coming out of your mouth, but what they're understanding is that, what we hope they're coming to understand is that there are reasons for things. And then once children understand that there are reasons for things, then they can start to predict what's going to happen if they do something, and also give them kind of an element of understanding when they are in control of things, and that they can also say yes or no to things when they are uncomfortable or need to.
Yeah, you've also talked to us about it's important to help your child identify and understand their emotions. This is kind of past the baby stage also. But how do you do that?
Yeah, so again, this can happen early on. So, at 6 months, your baby is crying for a reason. You say, oh, I see you're really, really sad. Oh, that must be because you're really hungry, right? So, they, of course, are not going to understand that crying is linked to the feeling of hunger that is going on in that their brain is telling them that they're hungry. But what it is, again, it's identifying that there is an emotion that they're having, that emotion is coming from somewhere, and that there's an explanation for that emotion. And so with age, then children can then start to be able to identify those emotions, put a word on it and a label on it to understand kind of what it is that feeling. Then you can start, getting them to realize and talk to them about the things that they can do to help control those emotions. And I don't mean by suppressing those emotions. I mean by just actively being able to cope with them in a problem-solving kind of manner.
I think we should talk about sleep deprivation, because it's a very, very big and serious issue, in fact.
Yes, it is. Yep. Right. So this is another thing going into parenting. I said, well, I used to cram for exams. I would stay up all night. I know what sleep deprivation is. I can totally handle it. Well, again, there's nothing that can prepare you for that kind of sleep deprivation where, you're going on maybe a couple hours of sleep, and it's not that you just need to look after yourself. You need to look after the little baby. If you have other children at home or aging parents, everyone has very different family structures, and you can't just look after yourself like I did when I was going through university. So that sleep deprivation is real. And what that does is it can, even if I knew what I should have been doing at a certain point of time, if you're sleep deprived, you can't access that knowledge as easily. And then, of course, your emotions kind of start to take over. So it is really important to recognize that sleep deprivation is challenging for parents, and be kind to ourselves and being like, we're not going to make what we think is the best decision when we're so tired. And that's why, having a supportive relationship and support that you can call and say, look, I need to get an hour's sleep because I'm not functioning well, and being able to recognize that. But it's not just the onus on the individual. It's also other people in your life. If they notice, like I wasn't making sense. Sometimes I was repeating things multiple times that I had just said an hour earlier. Just someone else being like, you need to sleep. And so that is, it's a real important issue.
And finally, I know you want to make the point, enjoy the journey and have fun.
Yes, definitely. It goes by so quickly, and it seems like a cliche because everybody tells you about that, but it does. And so sometimes you just have to kind of your house is a mess, your baby just vomited all over you, but you just have to sit back and laugh, because really these are the things that you're going to remember and laugh about later on.
Thank you very much for your time. Been talking to Dr. Annette Henderson from the University of Auckland.